Mike's got his game for his son.
What game was that face for?
It is tomorrow. Okay, we all set?
Right.
Cool. Okay, let's call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Weir.
Here.
Casanello.
Here.
Hader.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
Snyder.
Here.
Ramirez.
Here.
Morris.
Here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Gotta carry all my stuff.
Okay, we'll go with the town park sidewalk project.
Yes, so as I reported to council last month, we had applied for a VDOT grant to try and assist us with getting funding for the sidewalk in front of the town park. So if you look at the sheet that I have provided, this is a rudimentary drawing. This is just something to illustrate what we're looking at. You can see the red here is the proposed sidewalk, and then the yellow would be an extension of the bike lane. So what that would do is there'd be, right now where the gravel is, that essentially would be taken over by a bike lane, and then the sidewalk would come into the park a little bit. You will notice that at the one driveway, there is a separation. The reason for that is I've already been talking with VDOT a little bit. So you have to have an ADA ramp to an ADA ramp for a crosswalk. So if we have that and we can get the ADA ramp there, then hopefully we can have it go across to Coach Way, as you guys see where Coach Way has already got the 2 ADA ramps. Now that may change depending on what VDOT's requirements are, but that's the reason why that separation is there right now, is because the main focus is that we set this project up so that we will be able to move forward with a crosswalk shortly after the completion. It's not together because VDOT, you've got to show a lot of different things, one of which being the project complete, an ADA ramp to ADA ramp, and then you have to show different need and different things like that. So we'll start with this project and hopefully get it completed, and then, like I said, we'll roll right into hopefully the crosswalk afterwards. And then, is there any public comment for this specific project?
No comments? Any comments from council?
Not at this point.
Yeah, I see one break here. I'm assuming we're going to have another break really for the first entrance to go to the top lot, or are we going to rearrange that when we put this in?
So at the other break, essentially you could think about it similar to what's out front here at Town Hall, where there is an apron for an entrance, but there's still sidewalk there, but it also could be reconfigured as well so that there's no entrance there. So it kind of depends once we get down to the engineering phase, working with VDOT and what would be best and what would end up saving money so we could get it done.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that and make sure that everyone understood this isn't a recommendation to close it up. It's just details.
Correct. This is just an illustration of where the sidewalk would be. So essentially what you could see is it would be the sidewalk, it would be an ADA ramp, and it'd be asphalt, very similar to how Coach Way is. It'll just be asphalt for a short section of that driveway, just so we can have the ADA ramp to ADA ramp.
Good.
You grab the mic first.
Oh.
Age before beauty.
Thank you. Okay, so assuming that we have a consensus here of going forward, I guess we're going to work our way towards that. What's the timeline for this project? Have you any sense of when we might expect any funding, if any? If we do fund it out of our reserve, that's something else. So in other words, where are we going to get the money from? But essentially, what's the timeline for this kind of a project? From, all of the steps, the design, the engineering and design, the RFP or whatever you go out for bid, on and on and on to completion. It would be nice to have that, understand that.
So with this grant, we don't even have to have, basically, we need to get the thumbs up that we can complete the full application. The full application deadline would be October of this year. We would not end up getting the funding until probably 2023. And at that point in time, that's when VDOT would help us because they would be the ones administering the project. So they would kind of help us facilitate, just like we did with the pedestrian project here. So it would be quite substantial. It'd be a several-year-long
Get
process.
reimbursed if we build it before the 23rd.
That's a good question.
Did you make a mistake when you said 2023?
No.
No.
But here's the question,
this
to
is-
follow on to that, 2023, Chris. When will we know if we qualify and we will get some money? I mean, you're talking 2023 is when we get the funding?
So we should know, June of 2023, we should know 100% that we're going to get the funds. But they're short of telling us an exact date of when we would actually get the funds to be able to expend them.
It's too late.
But this is an 80-20 match, so this is a grant for $650,000 for the towns to contribute $162,500. So if we want to expend the full $800,000 on our own, we could do it at a faster rate. But we are also taking on all the risk at that point. So it just depends what council wants. If we see if we can move forward with this grant and hopefully have 80% of it paid for by VDOT, as well as having it administered by VDOT, which if it's not administered by VDOT, we would have to pay somebody like Christopher Consulting, which that comes with an additional cost. So instead of it being $800,000, it very well could be $1 million project. So it's a big swing from spending $162,000 over 2.5, 3 years to spending $1 million to get it done in 2 years.
So if we constructed it in 22, would 22 expenditures be able to be charged off against the 23 money?
No, it is not. We do have so basically what Bob is asking is our match that we're required to contribute is $162,500. So essentially what that is if we were to move sooner, would those funds be able to be reimbursable against the grant? And it is not. We would have to wait until we basically got the thumbs up that we have the grant and we're able to use the funding, which would be June of 2023, tentatively.
Isn't, couldn't say this necessarily a bad thing if we still got to go through our prioritization and strategic planning session, and I had a very good conversation with my 14-year-old daughter this morning, had some very good insights on which of the 3 projects she would like to see as a young adult who's getting ready to start driving. So, but beyond that, the rights of way, do we know if we have, I think we have ample right of way. We got it from Mike Gorman on Blight Drive.
Yes, the right-of-way is not an issue in this project.
So that depresses some of the costs. That's a cost savings that we have. Roberto or Emily, do we remember, I think what Mr. Gorman gave us was nominal, only like 15 grand, but we still have those monies. I think hopefully it's probably with interest has gained a little bit, but we do have some cash to be able to offset maybe some of the administrative items to contribute to that, even though it's nominal. This entrance would line up with the master plan that was adopted. Even if we are to move the elements within inside the park, it seems like the entrance will be static, especially because it's across from Haymarket Station. The second entrance now to the gravel parking lot for the park, I recall that was to be an emergency entrance. So it still had a curb cut. It still came across the sidewalk, but between the sidewalk and the parking area was to be some sort of pervious surface or like a grasscrete or something else to allow secondary access. So something to think about if we get into in the weeds of design, that these line up with some projects we've already had some preliminary concepts done on. Does that make sense? So I think it's a good start. Thanks.
Bob?
For my 2 cents, 2023 kickoff date for that project is a year too late. I'm not willing to kick it another 2 years down the road. I understand the financing of it. I also understand that we can, at least to my understanding, underwrite a considerable amount of the construction and design costs, specifically with respect to the stormwater aspect of it, to ARP funding, and save a lesser amount. But I'm not willing to continue to kick that can down the road. We've kicked it down the road for a decade now.
If I may. Okay. So I guess what we really need to do is look at the ARP funding and identify exactly what elements in that estimate that we got from Katie would apply to the ARP funding, so we can differentiate and move it out. And then we can see what we're left with funding on our own. And then, of course, the decision will be made. Do we wait until 2023, or do we go ahead with our own funding to do this project? And depending on how much we spend out of the ARP funds, that could give us an answer, perhaps, right? If it's not as much as 600,000. I mean, I looked at the estimate. I see that there's a 30% contingency on there. And of course, when you start doing the design, that number will drop, or it should drop, right? When you're doing,
Potentially.
well, I mean, 30% is pretty high for a contingency on this kind of a project, I would think. I think it'd be closer to 15%. The problem is that the design is not in that estimate. I mean, we don't know what that number is, but we do know it's somewhere around 10% of the total cost, roughly.
And then we also need to factor in the administration of it. So
Right, construction management and all of that stuff. So, I mean, I think we've got the conversation started. Is this something that we want to do? I think, personally, I think it's something that we should really look hard at doing going forward and start to pay back to the citizens of this town. 2023 seems to be a bit out there. It would be nice to know if we do qualify sooner than that, so that we can make that decision rather than wait until then. That just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, unless I'm wrong. I mean,
Anybody over here, quick?
I'm not here to say whether I'm for it or not, or 2023 is too far. I think right now we're just gathering the facts. So for me to go out on the line to say 2023 is too far, I believe it's too far, but I need some more information. So here are some questions. Chris, maybe if you have the answers. Just to summarize, the total project of $800,000, the town pays $120,000, roughly.
162,000.
162. We apply for it now. The deadline is October, and we won't know until June of 2023 whether we've been awarded.
So we should probably
grant.
know in June of 2022 if we got it. The funding is what we probably wouldn't get until June of 2023.
Okay.
So I apologize.
Okay, so that is where this is a work session. We just need to gather the facts, we hash it out, we ask questions, but not jump to conclusion, because we cannot make any decisions here. We're just talking. So let me continue. So June 2022, we would know if we should sit and wait for the deadline to get the money if we are approved for June 2023. During that period from October 2021 all the way to June 2023, can we withdraw our application? If the council decides to use monies from elsewhere to fast forward the project.
So I would actually ask, if we find out that we are going to get the funds, I would actually ask if we were to start spending money, similar to how Bob and Joe were saying, if we start spending the money early, can we use that as our reimbursement? I would ask that question first.
But then you'd have to wait until June 2022.
Correct. That may be, we have to wait until June of 22. But at the same time, if we still could make progressive steps forward, so in that year we can get a decent amount of the design done and some different things, we can get that 162. If we expend all of that and have the design and everything ready to go, we may be able to be shovel ready, if you will, right there, June, July, right after we get the funds, we're ready to move forward. Which, even if we start today on doing it ourselves, I don't know if we're going to be moving dirt in June of 2023.
And that's a good question to find out from them, which, when you put it in perspective, June 2023 may not be that far off if we can get approval June 2022 to go ahead and start spending towards the project. So that's a
Correct.
good question to ask them and find out the answer. Will there be a turn lane into the park?
No.
Okay.
Well, that's not part of this grant application.
But if we do decide later on, is that something that could even be entertained?
I mean, it depends on council how much they're willing to give up of the park right-of-way, but
It's striped right now. You may be able to do some within the,
I see that, but I'm just thinking ahead. Next 5 years, we have this issue with traffic, and the council then decides, hey, maybe a park lane, a turn lane would be necessary. Well, could there be one?
So I would say in that block, you actually have a lot of room to work with, and so it's always a possibility. You could have a lane headed east that turns left into the park entrance, and you can also explore taking a little bit more of the shoulder and having a dedicated right-hand turn in. It all depends on how you want to do your stormwater, your curb and gutter, and your sidewalk. But there is always the possibility, as you go back through there this week and you take a look, Haymarket Station, there's plenty of room in that area. It opens up right there.
Yeah, they don't use it anyway. So, so the $15,000 goes towards tying it into Blight Drive? Tying,
Yes, making that corner connection to what was put in by the Villages 2 developer.
okay. And Chris, are there any other options out there for financing that may prove to be faster?
The only other one, which Roberto and I have talked about, is right now the town has 3 loans. We are meeting with say that again? Yeah. So Steve, which is basically part of the financing, it's VML VACO financing, which kind of is who gives loans and stuff to different localities. With this substantial surplus that we finished in, we very well could pay off 2 of the loans that we already had currently and roll that into a lower rate and then potentially get a loan out for the total project. But I would want to identify all the costs before we kind of decide to move forward with that. But I do think when we get to Roberto's section that we should talk about if council doesn't know exactly what we want to do with the different projects, that may be a viable option because we could pay down that debt and reduce the town's liability, and then that would give us an option to try and get one loan to cover all 3 of the projects. But that is the only other financing or way that I think we would be able to move forward faster than getting this grant or just kind of keeping our head down and moving forward with it using reserves and operational expenses.
A good exercise that you could do, and Katie could help with this, is if we were to put the money forward from our reserves, from the town's reserve, and fund it, what would the timeline look like?
So-
Because 2023, we may think it's far away, but when you have the money in hand, there are so many things that we have to take into consideration that we can't, someone said shovel a while ago, we can't put shovel in the ground tomorrow even if we have the $1 million on hand.
So just to put it in perspective, anything that costs over $10,000, we get 3 quotes. So that includes the design, engineering, construction. So we're going to have to do like a closed bid process. Maybe somebody would be willing to do all 3, but you could very well have 3 or 4 different companies each doing a different piece. Based on their contract schedule, when they're doing what, that would also dictate who is going to do what, and it also dictates the prices. So I mean, just doing a request for bid process to get this together, it is a substantial amount of time. It's not, we're not going to be moving forward in 4 months, even if we decide to cut a check today. It's a substantial period just getting the contractors lined up, and who council decides is going to be the person building it, the person designing it, and even once we do that, even if we get the person who's going to design it, then it takes them a couple months to design it. And then it comes to council, ARB, planning commission, whoever else we want involved in it. So then you've got that design process is going to take a while. Once that happens, so it's just slowly but surely, and then there's change orders and little things happen. So, yeah, I think there's a lot that's going to go into this. It's not going to be something, there's nothing that we can do today and make a decision and say, all right, in a couple months it's going to be done. This is a long process.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's okay, if it's okay with you, I think it's a good exercise just for our knowledge, just to understand the difference between waiting on VDOT until June 2023 to see that it actually is a realistic time frame compared to us striking the check today and realizing that it will probably take maybe the beginning of 2023 to actually start getting work done, of which we would pay up to $200,000 more for the project, and we wouldn't have the stamp of VDOT on it, unlike compared to them doing it and them having the warranty. So I think it's just a good exercise, just to put some dates together for it, just to show us and even the public the timeline of what it would look like waiting on VDOT to come through with the grant compared to us doing it by ourselves. And I think it would ease a lot of tension in just to understand, hey, it is a long process. This is not something that you just get up and start moving dirt, especially when it comes to stormwater management.
And just to put it in perspective, the pedestrian projects from details down to Cupcake Heaven, that whole process took almost 11 years. And that was one that we kind of did ourselves with Christopher Consultant being the project managers.
Different scenario.
May not be the best example, but
No.
I understand
But
what you're
Not the
I'm
right
just to give you a reference point.
Yeah.
No, that's a terrible example, though. There's no comparison there. We already had most of the money in hand, and we were using it for other things in design and what have you, but we had the money in hand. It was the commitment to go forward. But like I said earlier, the timeline is really critical to helping us better understand what the elements of this project would be, right? And then you can intersperse it with the different types of funding mechanisms. But we also have to look at the ARP money and see what in the ARP money is available to help us obviate the additional costs, if possible. I think that's critical. We have to look at that. Maybe we have Miles here who can help us later try to figure out what we can and cannot spend that money on. So I would recommend we go through it with the town engineer line by line and see exactly what we can spend that money on. We may be able to do some preliminary work and get it started. I don't know. I don't know how we would sequence this at this point. As has been said, we don't know enough, and we need more information. But do we have a commitment to do this project? I think we do. The question is when and how. Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up. 800,000, where was that? I see 605 in the estimates. We were saying 800,000. Was that something, where'd that number come from?
So it's 650,000 is what we're requesting from VDOT, with the 162,500 being our contribution.
Okay.
So then it's 812,500.
You have a calculator?
So the cost estimate in here, the 605, that's the, without the matching.
Without the 30%.
So that's without VDOT's suggested contingency as,
Okay.
that's, so when you're filing for the grant, they kind of have
Their own formula. Okay.
their own formula for contingencies, and that's where we ran it as basically this is how much Katie had suggested it would cost. So then we ran with that, and we used that document as a reference for them.
That's fine. I just wanted to know where it came from. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so that's,
Can you,
Patient.
just one more question, if you can clarify. So Christopher Consultants, you're saying that the 605, what else is in addition to that?
so.
I know the
with-
design isn't
with
in there.
Well, with the VDOT grant, VDOT has certain calculators so that they have a like 5% contingency for design, 10% for engineering, 30% for construction, and then kind of like an overall one as well, that you have to use their
plug in that.
structure. So that's why it went from Katie saying 605 to the application is technically 812,500. And that's because they also have inflation is calculated in there. So, I mean, there's a lot of different factors inside that grant application.
And CM, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So once you start adding all that stuff, but we used Katie's as a reference to ask for the grant, and that's, how we move forward.
Yep, and that 30% is an added $180,000 on top of the 600, so you can kind of see where it comes up to 800 pretty quickly. You had some questions, Bob?
Actually, I don't have a question. I got a couple of comments. It seems that every time we want to do something in this town, We get caught up in paralysis by analysis. We've been talking about this project for literally 1 year. We are just now getting the engineering estimates. And now we're changing our tune based on a VDOT grant that we only found out about a couple of weeks ago. I've been whining and bitching about this for months. I want to get to the design phase. You know, we're talking about finding out in June of next year, a year from right now, whether we're even eligible or not. And that presumes that the grant monies that we apply for aren't already fully expended by prior applicants. We were last in the door, so I'm assuming that we're going to have last priority. There may not be any funding. We may find out next year that we wasted a year doing nothing in anticipation of monies that weren't coming. I sat behind this dais when the meals tax was first adopted years ago. That money was to be set aside for the streetscape and the streetscape alone. It was to pay for the streetscape, and this town has used it for everything but. For my 1/6, maybe 1/7, I want to start getting the design phase moving now. I don't want to wait anymore to reanalyze and overanalyze. We need to get this project moving. Otherwise, it's going to die yet again. 2 years from initial design to turning dirt. If we're that bad at carrying out a project, we shouldn't be doing it. As far as the actual design goes, I think it's short-sighted to design the project without at least 2 curb cuts. Because the minute you eliminate that first access to the park, we're going to start hearing the squawking. You know, I mean, we may have to revisit the overall park plan because it's already been changed and accommodate this, but at the very least, I would overplan it, at least with respect to the curb cuts, and plan for both of the curb cuts there so that you've got 2 entrances to the parcel. But, I mean, the long and the short of it is, the town has done nothing for long enough on this particular project, and it's time to kickstart it and get it going. I mean, we've been talking about this since at least 2015 or 2014, when we got the easements and the money for the improvements at the corner of Blight Drive. That was 6 years ago. I think it's long past time to kick this off.
Can I ask a question? So, this is for everybody, right? I mean, for construction people, what have you. So if we were to do just the design, I guess we could do a bid package for that, right?
Could do a design build.
Well, that's exactly where I was going. Design, bid, build. Now, are there any companies out there that do that kind of work in this area? Design, bid, build. And I would assume that there's some savings associated with DBB.
Most of the county's contracts in recent years, and in fact, most of VDOT's contracts in recent years, are design-build projects. I-66, the Divergent Diamond, those were all design-build projects. And you're right, you do save
There's a certain percentage.
a percentage, in theory.
I mean, we could do the standalone design, but then, you know, that's going to sit until we make a decision whether we're going to go forward.
And then you have to get another engineer another construction company up to date on somebody else's engineering plans, and then they have to review it, and so on and so forth.
Sounds like a challenge for Miles, but we'll talk about that later. But actually, we should look at that. I mean, we should look at both, you know, the traditional method as well as the DB, or I was going to say D-bomb, but we're going to operate and maintain, not them. So, just a thought.
I just feel like we're getting ahead of ourselves with the 2 other projects we've discussed. The evolution of this, the park sidewalk was actually 3rd. The town center project had already gotten the design. We have an approved site plan. The park master plan was adopted, and the park sidewalk was sort of the afterthought, and wasn't even budgeted in the original park plan. We were given some estimates to adopt with it. And then we have the turn lane project that's evolving as well.
What's the oldest project in town?
Streetscape.
the streetscape.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, in terms of where we put resources in ahead of that, so I guess we have these two other projects we've asked Katie to look at. That's what we're doing our strategic session on the 23rd. So I see some of the posturing we see already, some where our priorities lie, but I would like us to go with some of the other, I would like to hear what the other projects have, and similarly where they're positioned to be moving forward ahead of others and where the money might be allocated to that, but I think the park's definitely a priority.
But there are also additional components to the transportation projects in terms of VDOT
Well,
cooperation,
let's
and
get through
county
that.
money, and all that
Well,
wonderful stuff.
We're taking
but-
positions right now.
Okay.
Let's pull back to all three, and then we can start sort of whittling down which ones we want to move forward on, so.
So I hear a lot about like timeline not fitting in people's ideals. I would love to hear what the timeline would be if we decided to fund it ourselves. I think that's a great perspective to have. I also did kind of want to comment on possible alignment with having our park completed and the sidewalk, since we're not sure where that park project is quite yet. We're still working through that. The 2023 timeline may not be so difficult if it lines up with the park completion as well. And if we did that, then we would save substantial amounts of money, and we could focus it on things like, you know, the Jefferson turn lanes and things like that to ensure public safety throughout different parts of the community and not just focusing on the park. I do know that the park is very important to our community, especially young families, you know, wanting to use it and stuff. So I'm looking forward to hearing the options of both VDOT support and then us supporting ourselves through this.
So it sounds like we got a big request for you. Want to try and get some type of idea on the scope of this. It looks like they want to see about what type of paralleling can happen here, and if we go and take full ownership of it, that's a timeline for that. How we can continue with the application if we want to try and keep things in parallel to give us these options. What type of scope are you looking at being burdened with this request?
So that's where, realistically, after all the different notes and everything that I wrote down, the things that I'm going to really focus on is trying to get a timeline if we were to do it ourselves, and a timeline if we were to use VDOT grant money, because they should have kind of I think that they kind of had a estimated timeline from kind of beginning to end in the grant documents. But I'll verify with the VDOT rep that we've been in contact with that in fact was for this project. And then I'll have to work with Katie about the timeline if we were to pay for it ourselves. And then the same thing with the ARPA money. We'll have to try and find the language that clears it up, what specifically would be allowed and what wouldn't. And then after that, then we can worry about financing the project overall. But because I do want to also reach out to Christopher Consulting, what the price would be if they were to project manage, again, because they were the ones that project manage the pedestrian project.
Yeah, if you could get, beforehand, if you could get these timelines so that, and try to meld them together so that we can have decision points on when we need to decide whether we go all in ourselves or wait for VDOT, how much effort we can put, or how much money we can put up front without risking losing the VDOT money if we do get the, you know, if you can put some type of decision points in there on that timeline, that would be good too.
And I wouldn't make perfection the enemy of the good, you know? Doesn't have to be
I
perfect.
want to tie it back into, Mr. Mayor, if I can, to tie it back into Bob's main point, is that we are moving forward with it. It is something that this, I believe, I can speak on behalf of the council, we are committed to moving forward with this, especially getting something started before we leave office, or some of us who are leaving office the next term. So, I mean, but just to let everyone know, I am also committed, just as Bob is, in getting this project done. But I think there is still some information that we can garner and gather, especially what Joe mentioned with the, what was that, Joe, the funding? Chris mentioned it a while ago, ARPA?
ARP,
ARP.
ARP, American
Yes.
Rescue Plan. Well, just keep in mind, it's probably not a big issue, but the more you push a project out, the more inflation rears its ugly head, and it costs more. So that's another consideration. In this case, it's a smaller project. It's probably not as bad as one might expect, but the more you add zeros, the more that costs go up. So
I'm telling you, man, we're facing it right now. Just the buckets to collect the glue that, to put on insulation, they're having problems getting the buckets. Paint, eggshell, it's going on the long lead item
Problems.
list.
I got a contention here for who's next. You're good?
As I say, Councilman Morris, is a suggestion that we're prioritizing this without the benefit of the discussions of our two projects, or?
No. This is not prioritizing at all.
Okay,
I am as committed to number 3 as I am to number 1.
okay.
So I'm not here to make a decision on number 3, which is the sidewalk is going ahead. That is a decision that Chris cannot make. It's a decision that council makes.
I think all of us are adamant about getting the projects moving forward, just the prioritization. Thanks.
Anything else?
No, I mean, don't we already have a priority list, and aren't these both on it?
Not ranked, or which ones we
Yeah,
moving
they're
out.
ranked on my sheet.
Yeah, I gotta look up that.
What is your secret sheet?
It's the one that was, no, it's the one that was forwarded to us.
Emails.
It's only secret if you didn't participate.
It's only
I know,
secret if
right?
you didn't check your email. I mean,
So
Emails.
Okay, what's up with the negative waves?
all right, would you please elucidate?
I think we've been doing this in a vacuum. If we need to do it publicly, then I think we need to make it known.
park
Why we wait for
sidewalk,
this coordination move.
park sidewalk is a tier 2. Damaged curb, gutter, sidewalks, and crosswalks is a tier 2.
Farmers market is a tier 2.
Okay, isn't that separate from our CIP? That's what I'm looking at in our CIP. How do we want to?
CIP is determined by year, not by priority and by funding mechanism. But we've got our list, our town council priority list. And where does,
We're mixing terms. I understood the
the turn lanes are a tier 3.
The exercise we're doing at the end of the month, Mr. Mayor, what is that?
That's an ARP funding exercise.
Coming out of the CIP, we were waiting, coming out of the budget, we were going to look at the CIP, what monies we wanted to put toward that. And as part of that was prioritizing these projects, correct? And we have yet to have that formal, we may have put these projects on paper, but we have yet to go through the exercise of what money we're going to direct where and when. I understand on this one, the park project, we're having Chris put together that analysis to see the trigger for if we self-fund or do with VDOT. Do we not want to do the same for the others and decide which one we want to pull the trigger on
Well,
first?
that's where we're at now because we just got the numbers. I've been harping for the
When do we
numbers.
have that discussion? That's what I'm looking forward to.
I thought we
add
were
that
going to
the
start
23rd?
having it tonight. I'm all for continuing having it tonight and any other meetings you want to have.
Well, the only thing we have on the agenda tonight is for the town park sidewalk discussion. Do we
Yeah.
want to go ahead and add that to next week? Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm stepping in for you.
CIP discussion, I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
I don't know what else we have on the agenda next week. so.
But do we have the proper the documentation to support a CIP discussion?
Could we not have that for the 23rd then? Do the same sort of overall estimates we're doing for,
We have
The sidewalk.
They're all those estimates are in the report from Katie.
Okay.
For the turn lanes and for the sidewalk. So we can certainly have the discussion next week. Now, it may mean reprioritizing our items, and potentially reprioritizing the CIP, and I've got no problem with that.
And there will be some holes because of
And-
no cost for some of the CIP items, right?
Yeah.
So,
And the question, which will then lead into the discussion at the end of next month with respect to how we plan to use ARP funds, whether you want to do it on one-time capital expenditures, ongoing commitments, that sort of thing. And I've done a little bit of looking around over the last couple of weeks, and there is relatively recent Treasury guidance with respect to ARP funding for stormwater that refers back to an EPA document. It says, so long as you are in compliance with this directive or document, which is an overview of clean water state revolving fund eligibilities, supposedly you can expend ARP money on that And one of the items is for measures to manage, reduce, treat, or recapture stormwater or subsurface drainage water, which would apply to both projects. And it actually goes well beyond that into management, stormwater BMPs, actual construction, design, mitigation on road projects like curbings, and even street sweeping is allowed. So there's a lot of areas that we could potentially recover expenditures directly through ARP funding, and all we would have to do is keep a record of it and audit it on, what is it, $1.6 million that we're going to have a hard time spending anyway?
Okay.
That's a Miles discussion later.
We had a hard enough time spending the CARES Act money.
Mr. Mayor, let me sort of jump ahead a little bit. So we have the Katie's report. We've done the park discussion already. It seems like Chris has his priority. When do we look at the other two projects? Do we want to sort of dive into those next week? After we have our ARP discussion, which is next?
Now, ARP money is next month.
Okay, we have an agenda item right here that says economic development, ARPA discussion. Oh, that's why.
That's something
Hey,
different.
Mr. Miles.
Yeah, we've got a work session set for the 23rd strictly on ARP
Can we
funding.
make that then now the ARP and piggyback on that?
I have no
Reshuffling
problem
of-
doing that.
Okay. Reshuffle CIP and align that with our board priority sheet.
And that meeting, the front end of that meeting will be kind of a strategic initiative session in which we definitely look at the CIP, we identify what we feel we need to move forward with, and then we start attacking where we want to throw the money to.
Yeah, I think that was the impetus, at least that was my impetus for scheduling it or wanting it scheduled, was so that we could get all on the same page with respect to what we wanted to spend that money on, and as part of that discussion, you would necessarily have to discuss your CIP and your ranked priorities. I just assumed that all would
Happen at once.
happen at once.
Thanks for indulging me. So I see it as we got VDOT money, we've got the
We potentially got VDOT
ARPA
money.
money, we've got the amount we put in our budget, and then we have the reserves. We have all those kitties. So it sounds like if we look at that together,
Yeah,
match that up against how we want to push it out to our CIP or our three big projects that Katie just gave us, that was the exercise I was expecting we were going to happen.
yeah, that's what we
Three
need to
priority
do.
projects, cost estimates X, here's where we can draw from.
Yep.
You're not really in a negotiating position anywhere. How would the county play into any of the funding for the park, if at all?
We have just scheduled that meeting for the turn lane, so I haven't even spoke to them about the park.
About the,
Huh?
which part?
Our park.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just saying, we're going to be talking to the county about, some shared pain
okay.
here
Gotcha.
with respect to Jefferson Street, east, north and south,
Oh, that's right, okay, thank you.
hopefully. Hopefully, we'll be able to work something out. After all, we do pay taxes to the county, and we're not getting anything back near as much as what we send to the county. So, that's the impetus for me and others, I
I
think.
think that's why I
Yeah.
pushed it so hard.
Exactly. But, is the park another possible candidate for that discussion? I don't know. Something to think about as we go forward. Because after all, who's using the park? Our residents do, but other people do as well.
That would require us to coordinate some type of discussions with Seth or his boss. We haven't started that yet, have we?
No.
Mr. Mayor, is
But
it,
we have the opportunity.
Well, Public Works, transportation, we want to hit them up for everything, right?
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, on August 23rd, on the agenda, we're going to have item 1 is strategic initiative, then it's going to be CIP, then it's going to be ARPA money.
No, it was strategic initiatives and the framework of ARP funding is item 1. That's what the purpose of the work session was for. How do we spend the ARP money on our strategic goals?
So I'm basing it on what Mayor said. He said that he wanted a
We need to
strategic
figure out
initiative
what our
overall.
strategic goals are.
Right.
But if,
So we
and
need to have
that's,
some type of frameworks. We need to have some work to create the framework.
I get it, but we've got to make decisions on ARP funding first. So, we sort of need to keep that in mind
Right.
we're on that we have a much shorter leash on that than we do anything else because of the timeline.
But we do need to create a framework.
Oh, yeah.
To shake out what our priorities are to spend the ARPA money on.
Yeah.
Talking about capital projects.
Yes.
Just if we're on the same page, okay.
Yes. That's my sole intent, is to say, okay, here's what we said, here's what we put down in our, here's our strategic initiative to move forward, here's the CIP stuff, here's this. How does it shake out and rank to our strategic initiatives? This is what we're going to put our money on.
And then it's a matter of figuring out how much of the ARP money you can use on it, if you can use any.
That'll come after that meeting, though.
No, that will come during
react-
that meeting.
Well, some
The initial
discussions will,
discussion, yeah.
but, I mean, preliminary, we'll come up with money, and if we have to work it, massage it, we'll do that as we move on.
Does it make sense either the finance committee or maybe staff has a general outline to get us started?
I've already been working with Roberto with respect to some of the guidance by Treasury, and especially, well, not so much with operational stuff, but with respect to infrastructure costs. And hopefully Roberto's been doing some work other than what I gave him. But I think we should be able to put together between now and then a relatively comprehensive use of what, and we'll probably argue about this, what we believe we can justify based on Treasury guidance.
You're indulging me, and I appreciate it. I'm a visual person, so I'm visualizing in my head how this all works. So it would be helpful for us to be able to have some recommendation on, hey, you have these 4 sources of money for these projects. Our preliminary analysis says of the ARP money that you could use it for X percentage of the town center project, X percentage of the intersection project, and X percentage on the town park project. Have all those initials. Or, hey, you can pull 20% from ARP, you can pull 50% from VDOT on the park project, and you can pull the balance from our reserves. That sort of preliminary.
That kind of matrix.
That sort of easy matrix is going to be helpful for me, and it'll be helpful for the rest of the council to be able to kind of go down the line and see where all the dots connect.
Right.
I thought that's where Joe was going earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, well, set a
So
different way then.
that just puts it on Joe and my plate to sit down with Roberto and
And we will
argue
have
that one.
another line item on there, or column, should I say, and that's bonding.
Okay.
What kind of money will we need
It's
to
another
pull out?
option, yeah.
That's another option.
Okay.
Right.
You put all funding streams on there,
Yeah.
potential funding.
And then, I guess, staff, does that sound like an easy way to help you sort of help organize the discussion for us, or does that put a lot more work on you guys, or it's stuff we've already talked about?
Still trying to clarify, are we doing strategic initiatives first? I mean, I just want to get the overall, I mean, just for the work session itself, what are we focusing on, number one, number
The
two?
mayor told you, man.
But
the mayor
strategic
told you.
initiatives, if it's specific to ARP, or strategic initiatives overall?
Are you listening to the mayor or Bob? The mayor said it.
But-
Over the next month, we have homework to do ourselves, and that's to come up with what we vision our plan to move forward with. And of course, that's going to be kind of like what we did with the priorities list, right? Then we shake out from that in our framework. Here are the capital investment things that we need to attack. Now we start to put this matrix together of what are our funding streams, how does this look, where are our risks. We're going to have to say that we're going too broad, let's narrow this down, let's take off a few of the items, and it's just going to be one big hash at that point. But I'm assuming that the initiatives framework piece will probably take an hour up front.
From what you and I talked about, the initiatives are already online.
Yeah.
The initial ones, yeah.
Initial
I
ones.
want to improve those.
So is it just go through and strike what carries forward and then just see what we want to tweak, or do we want to reinvent the wheel?
I'll put something together and get it out by the end of this week, which kind of gives you some type of documentation framework with examples on it that I've come up with,
Okay.
that I want people to contribute to for us to hash out at the initial part of the meeting and start to identify these are the action items we want to pull from these initiatives that will require, the ARPA spending, the,
Well,
capital, investment or improvement plans,
And why don't I send the Treasury the document the Treasury points to everybody, so you can kind of get a sense of what's eligible or in theory is eligible?
I'm saying everything's eligible right now because we got
that's
multiple,
my take. I could
we got
justify
multiple
anything.
revenue streams, so
That's
I'm
my-
considering
that's my
everything
take.
eligible
So,
at this
Mr. Mayor,
point.
that initiatives was one. What was number two?
ARP,
ARP. And number three?
Yeah.
CIP.
You got it, Chris?
Yes. And they're kind of all
This is an effort
integrated.
that, you know, really at the front end, it's very unconstrained, right?
Yes. Wide
I
open.
mean, you should know that, right?
For someone who talks a lot, I'm just like, man, let's just make some decisions. Let's get to the meat and potatoes. I'm sorry.
In no way are we saying the sidewalk is something we're gonna jump on tomorrow and sign, but this discussion that we just finished having with the park sidewalk is helpful for staff to get the information together that's gonna help us in next month's meeting. And in the same way, with the finance committee pushing things forward, that's gonna help us with this project here. And it will also help with other things that staff is able to research and bring it for our discussion. So I don't want you to walk away thinking, oh, we are here, you know, discussing the sidewalk and, you know, Chris and Bob said, hey, I'm ready to jump on this. That doesn't mean we're gonna sign. No, we just ask staff right now to do some more research on it.
I just sent everybody the documents.
I'm looking forward to when we can have it.
Next week's agenda, you do want the CIP discussion on, correct?
We've not yet discussed the town center write-up from Katie or the other one. Do we want to have that? I guess what you're asking, do we want to have that next week?
That's what I'm asking. Am I putting the CIP discussion on?
Council,
next week's agenda?
Bob said thumbs up a while ago, so
So we had the town parks disposed of. It's these other two we got to knock out.
good. On the agenda.
Putting that on next week's agenda as well, right?
We'll review the priority package with the SCIP, yes. So, yeah, just add it all, just
And that,
all
that'll get
nauseam,
us-
right?
That'll knock off the preliminary discussion that we would otherwise have to have on the 23rd,
Correct.
which gives us more time to focus on ARP money.
Well, other things may shake out of it. We'll see, because,
But it gets us down the road a little
yeah,
bit.
exactly.
It moves the
Yeah,
ball.
because we already kind of know what our major ticket targeted items are. But we do got to do you know, take the blinders off and let's really look at what we need to do, right? And then let's come back and we draw back to it. Okay, I think we beat that one. Is that good enough for you guys?
I was just gonna ask him, is that clear as mud? Okay.
I'm gonna get some more coffee.
I'm going to continue moving forward with what I said earlier, the timeline and the ARPA funding. So check into that.
Okay. I guess we can move forward then. Thanks for waiting patiently for us, Miles. You're up.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here again. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for allowing us to come and talk to you tonight about what we hope to do over the coming year. You know, I have to start by making a confession. They say that doctors and consultants shouldn't fall in love with their clients. I fell in love with Haymarket. Working on the CARES Act, which was a tricky situation. We had a very limited amount of time to put it together. Chris had done some great preparation, but we really had a lot of money to get out in a very limited amount of time, and it really, I think, came out pretty well. And in fact, some of the creative things that Haymarket was able to do with their money have served as a lesson to larger communities who were stymied by some of the same challenges. So it certainly incentivized me to want to come back. And working with all of you, working with Chris, has been a real pleasure. So let me give you a little general background. Most of you know that I'm a lifelong economic developer, 42 years now in the business, which reminds you I'm not young, but I still have pretty good energy for economic development. I love what I do. I have since partnered with Michelle Coe, who's here with me tonight. Michelle brought to our practice tremendous skill in marketing and branding. And, you know, nothing you do in economic development is free of the need to market and brand, both externally to businesses, tourists, and so forth, but also internally to your own businesses. And we did a lot in terms of marketing under the CARES Act, as much as we could squeeze to do some things to get the word out about venues are open, restaurants are open, it's safe to be here, it's a good place to be now. We're coming out of the pandemic just like you are. We got some free help from Prince William County, which we leveraged from their Parks and Recreation Department. We got some paid advertising done in a variety of social media. We did some radio advertising and really began a little bit of sort of backing into some branding as well, which was really very exciting. So what we are proposing, and I'm going to ask Michelle to just introduce herself in a minute, but what we're proposing is to try to be here with you now for the entire year so that we can help build on the success and the rapport that was built with the business community during the CARES Act funding, and to be an ongoing source of expertise and person power to supplement the great work that you do and that Chris does to build on that and help your business community grow and prosper and bring in additional valuable investments into the community. But before I go into any more detail, Michelle, would you just come up and...
Hi. So I'm Michelle Coe. In addition to partnering with Miles on these types of projects where we're serving communities, I also have a firm, Blue Sky Phoenix, located in Fauquier County, and we do brand strategy, web design, development, and marketing strategy. I am in my 10th year of business now and serve clients all over the U.S. So in partnering with Miles, I've had the opportunity to really expand my scope with what I do from serving businesses of all sizes, from micro businesses up to the larger businesses, and kind of pivot that and work with communities. And that's been really exciting for me. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to work with Haymarket. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you.
You know, one of the things that really impressed me when we were working on the CARES Act was I attended some of the community business meetings that Chris had organized. And after several of those meetings, there was a line of people waiting to talk to me, and I hadn't really said much of anything at these meetings, which maybe that's why they thought I might in fact have something to say. But almost every question was about marketing and the internet. And of course, with the pandemic, so many businesses pivoted by expanding or undertaking new activities on the internet. That's one of the reasons why someone like Michelle can be invaluable, because she works with businesses, as she said, of all sizes. And we're really eager. You know, there's a lot of money being spent by the federal government and regional governments to help businesses start a website and get online. But those of you that are using the internet know that's not enough. You have to have a strategy. You have to know why you want to be online. Who do you want to reach? What's the message? Is it to communicate better with existing customers or to draw in new customers, or both? Is it to tout all the new ways you're operating as a business, or to remind people that you're still the business you were before the pandemic? And how to do that? It's a mystery to so many people. So that's one of the things we really like doing, and that would be a part of this. We position this in a couple of ways, and we tried to separate what we want to do in year one with where this might go in a multi-year objective. So, you know, economic development has various stages, but we think it starts with really getting to know your business community. And we started that. Chris and I went around to at least a couple of dozen businesses, I think. Every one of them was thrilled that somebody from the town came in to talk to them. And I find that in a lot of communities, the simplest thing in the world, which is just going in and treating your business, hey, you're important, how things, what's going on, builds esprit de corps immediately. And then you start to hear about what their issues are. They don't have to come to a meeting of the full council or call their council person and complain. They can say, well, if only we could do so-and-so, you know, that would be a big help. Or if I only knew where I could get some counseling on finance or on computers or whatever. So the first stage of what we would do is to expand on that, to visit as many businesses as we can, get to know them and hear what their issues are, what their needs are, and see which of those we can address. You know, they're going to bring up things the town can do, either with its own money or with ARPA money. But they're also going to bring up things like the weather, you know. I was years ago in a homeowners association in a condo, and the most frequent calls I got were people who said, there's a lot of snow piled up in front of my doorway. And I'd say, well, we have somebody to plow the driveways. You'll have to get out with a shovel and shovel your front walk, you know. But there are so many things, and so many things that even if the town can't help them with, that we can refer them to people. Small Business Development Center at George Mason, the County Economic Development Agency, various state agencies and regional agencies. One of the things we did during the CARES Act experience was to pair up with Prince William Economic Development and Prince William Tourism. And some of the help they gave us from the tourism department was free. And, you know, when I call them, and I know the people in both agencies, they said, we'd be thrilled to work with Haymarket. So that's one of the things that we were able to bring to the CARES activities. We'd like to bring more of that, build more of those relationships with free sources of assistance to the town and your businesses. So everything in that first piece, and hopefully you've read it. If you haven't, I'll just say the first phase is really assessing the interests of the business community, helping entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is the coming thing in economic development. It only took economic developers 30 years to figure out how important entrepreneurship was. And I'm an economic developer, so I don't have to apologize for saying that. The Kauffman Foundation has given billions of dollars to state and local governments, asking them to help entrepreneurs. It's beginning to happen because that's where you build your base. You know that. Your existing businesses, your young and old entrepreneurs. And I say young and old for a couple of reasons, because we've started programs to fill the pipeline with young entrepreneurs so that doesn't die out as an art and as a career pathway. Helps keep kids in place, too, so they don't leave so quickly. But there's also a lot of baby boomers out there starting new businesses. Baby boomers are the most entrepreneurial age group in the United States. They are not retiring in record numbers. And I'm a baby boomer, again, so I can say that. You know, people who've worked for the federal government or huge corporations their whole career, and now they want to open a boutique or a wood shop or, you know, all different, and most of them succeed. So I wouldn't ignore any age group of entrepreneurs in the community, and you might be very surprised. The other thing I talked about was connecting people with free sources of assistance. Small communities, and this is a passion of mine, having been in the business as long as I have, one of my greatest concerns has been, what does a community do that's small and has constraints on spending to have an economic development program? Because I'm a little biased, but I think everybody needs an economic development program. And this community is doing pretty well, you know that. But that's the time to build your economic development program. Because by the time another pandemic hits or some other, you know, hurricane turns the wrong way and levels places, that's the worst time to start an economic development program. When things are good, that's the best time. And of course, we operate in reverse. You know, we tend to invest money in economic development when we're in trouble and get conservative when things are going well. Well, it should be just the opposite. I'll tell you one more side story. When I was in graduate school, I took an advanced economics course taught by, and this is how old I am, taught by the man who'd been the last president of the National Bank of China before the communists took over. When he got to the section on the Federal Reserve, he started laughing out loud to a class of graduate students, some of whom were laughing too, though they didn't know why. He said, here's what I can tell you about the Federal Reserve. Every time they take an action, it makes it worse. Because by the time they recognize we're moving into inflation and take actions to slow it down, we've already peaked, and we're starting to head into recession, and they exacerbate the recession. And the opposite holds true as well. So you don't want to wait until you have a meeting like this and say, you know, we can't fund our budget, and we don't know what we're going to do, and businesses are closing. Now is the time to do this. So we have been looking, Michelle and I, and other consultants in the field, for ways to work with smaller communities, and communities, some of whom are quite large but quite rural, who are limited in their ability to spend money. They can't afford a full-time economic developer. They can't spend $50,000 on a consultant. You know, there's all kinds of reasons. And so we've tried to find a model that would work. I can tell you, in all honesty, that Haymarket is our loss leader. Because I was doing work here, because we're neighbors, and because I really, as I said, fell in love with the community. The price we're bidding here is way below our normal fee range. And we also offered to hold it constant for 3 years if you're interested in making that long a commitment. I'd love to do this. I'm happy to answer any questions. One comment on ARPA and using it for the project you were talking about. ARPA still holds communities' feet to the fire about tying things in with the pandemic, except there are a few exceptions. So some infrastructure is included in those exceptions, water, sewer, and broadband. If you can rationalize your project and the groundwater and wastewater issues and stormwater issues, any of those issues that will qualify, we're waiting for Treasury to come out with the final guidelines. And if CARES Act has any experience, those took a long time to come out. So I think you're right to be talking about your priorities now and looking to ARPA. Absolutely, we encourage every client, look to ARPA, but don't spend a dollar, even in theory, until we see what the final guidelines look like. Just a thought on that. I'm going to stop for now and then invite questions. As some people will tell you, including my partner and Chris, I could go on all night, but you don't need me to do that.
So in reading the paper you sent over, I did read and was hoping that you could clarify for everyone here as far as your fees. It also mentions plus expenses. Could you elaborate on what type of expenses we could be seeing?
Sure. If we attend some kind of conference on your behalf that requires a registration fee, I don't expect to do extensive travel, but there are plenty of things in the region. The Virginia Economic Developers Association has meetings that are pretty valuable where you can learn about what other communities are doing. If we decided together that there was a piece of software that would enhance your ability to target potential investors, those kinds of things. But now, first of all, they would all have to be pre-approved. We're not going to go out and run up a bill and then say, oh, by the way. And the other is if you wanted to put, as part of the contract, put a cap on those expenses, that's fine too.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome.
Chris, would this tie in or would have some relationship to the part-time community relations coordinator you're offering? Or?
It's kind of the 1-2 punch in my view. This would be the high level 30,000 foot view, how to steer the ship, where the PR person would kind of be the boots on the ground, making it happen day in and day out. That's kind of how I see it. And then also I just wanted to mention we do have the $22,000 in economic development, and this is something along those lines is what I was thinking of, is getting a consultant in here to try and help with a little bit extra in there for if we wanted to do a marketing campaign or a initiative or even like a shop small event. We had some money in there to accomplish some things. So I do just want council to know that economic development that, you know, I talked with Vice Mayor about this before the budget kind of came out. This was kind of the vein that we were thinking of, is getting a consultant or something like this to fill that economic development piece.
This would be sort of to say it back to you, this piece would be their piece would be the strategy, and then this other position would be the execution of it. So, okay.
Exactly. That's my plan right now.
If I could, I would add too that with this much more flexible piece of federal money, this ARPA money, there are things that you can do with it pretty surely now that you couldn't do with CARES money. Mm-hmm. Workforce development, for example. If you're assisting workers who are impacted by the pandemic or businesses who are affected by the pandemic and need to retrain people. So workforce development, entrepreneurship, and the entire hospitality industry, which was forbidden under the CARES Act.
So just kind of something that you can think of is there's like a Serve Safe, which is a certificate so that people can work in different restaurants, and we have quite a bit of restaurants here in town, so that's something where we could actually have a trainer and they register, so we cover the cost of it to have quite a bit of people come in and register, and hopefully we try and have the businesses or someone from the businesses here to say, hey, we are looking for people that have that Serve Safe certification or something like that. So, you know, when you think about workforce development, it's kind of things like that. We can offer it, and hopefully we can get some of them into the different businesses that may need it.
Thank you.
I was going to say, I think this is a huge piece for our businesses. It's a service that goes way beyond just a financial piece. So I love it. I'm all for it.
I would add too, by the way, I didn't mean to interrupt, but we also would bring our network to the table. So you asked about companies that do design build. We have relationships with companies like that. We have relationships with people in the workforce industry. We have relationships with people in finance. So, you know, all of this, if you hire us, our network becomes your network as well. So.
No, that's okay. That's a good clarification. I appreciate that. I haven't had a chance to read this. I may have missed the email, so I'm going to look this over very carefully, and I'll get back to you. Is there contact information, or is it going to be through?
It's down at the bottom.
Yeah. Okay, great.
It is. Our information's on there, but Chris might want to.
Look at that. Miles Friedman. There it is. How did I miss that? Anyway, so.
Because you're Italian, you were too busy talking with your hands.
Talking with my hands, yeah. Thank you, Bob. Wait a minute. I think you're part Italian.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so I like what I'm hearing. If past performance is any indicator, as we know, that's a good thing, right? I mean, the CARES Act went very well, from what I can see. We still have some money left over that needs to be targeted for investment somewhere. I guess we'll get to that. Is that something you would also be helping Chris with? Okay, good.
And that is one thing that I did forget to mention, is that the last remaining bit of the CARES Act money, which originally we had stated we wanted to try and do the vouchers again.
Right.
However, now that we've got the business license and all that information in, Miles and I talked about it. We don't know if that's going to qualify because our businesses did almost as good as they did the year prior.
Right.
So that may be something that we kind of need to adapt a little bit.
And that's
but I
because the
think,
CARES Act adapted, right? Helped them adapt.
and that's where I think, you know, Miles helped us so much last year with it. I think it'd be a good idea to kind of use that money with his assistance as well.
We're also already working with several other clients to structure their ARPA. So we're in the business.
I like to hear that, structure the ARPA. I mean, I think that's really critical so we can get the biggest bang for the buck, right? Leverage that as best as possible. And thank you for being here, Michelle. Appreciate that too. What I'm hearing is a bunch of components: education, right? Communication, facilitation, all of those things. I like the idea of you being helped to guide the businesses into these free resources that they may not even be aware of. So that's like an education component. It's so very important. Now, there's also something going on here, and you may be aware of it. We have this hotel going in. And as part of that project, we have an MOU with that hotel. They're going to be doing some targeted marketing as well. And perhaps maybe that is something you can all tie into. I'm not sure, you know, if you've thought about that or even if you're aware of it, but.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We could definitely liaison with them and kind of jump on the back of whatever it is that they're already doing to become a multiplier and to use that. Something that I just want to mention is that, you know, through my work with, I also serve on the board of the Fauquier Chamber of Commerce and founded the Micro Enterprise Council in 2018. And so I have quite a bit of experience with connecting small business with resources, and it's just so important to do. Micro businesses in particular are the ones that need the most help and have the fewest resources to do it. So that's definitely a passion project for me. But with regards to the marketing, yes, there's any number of ways that we can get the biggest bang for the buck,
Right.
piggyback on other things that are already going on, and to become that liaison in between the town and whatever private enterprises are already doing here.
Right. And, you know, do you have connections with the county as well?
Yes.
You do. Okay. Prince William?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'll read this.
Mr. Mayor, just two things. There's the CARES Act money, as long as we don't give the government back any money. Good. And is the fee for the CARES Act is included in this contract?
Actually, the fee for originally managing the CARES Act program would have included any CARES Act money, so yes.
Let me rephrase it.
Let me rephrase my question.
Okay. Is it included in this
Yes.
program? In effect, yes, it is included.
I know what you're asking, and no, it is not. We already paid for the previous contract with the
The
CARES
rest
Act.
of it, man, the
Yes.
rest of it.
Yeah.
Is the rest of the
This is
CARES
all
Act-
add-on.
So yes, so with this contract, they would also assist us with the remaining CARES Act, as well as doing this stuff.
Okay, so this is a 3-year contract.
No, it's a 1 year.
One
It's
year.
just that, what they did is they kind of broke it out as, ideally, they would like at least a 3-year, and this is how the phase project they would go. If we want to go 3-year, we can go 3-year. If we want to
they
go
would
1 year at a
guarantee us
time, we can
this
do 1
rate.
year at a time.
All right, let me break it down in Jamaican for you. So we pay for 2021. 2022 CARES Act money still comes around.
No,
Is
CARES
that
Act's done.
included?
CARES Act ends December of 2021.
Okay. But whatever remaining monies that we have, if we would go ahead with this company, the CARES Act management of whatever is left from would be included in this fee.
Yes.
Yes.
As well as the payment of the consultant fee itself with the CARES Act funding.
Right.
You can apply.
It's not, okay.
So we can use CARES Act to cover this contract, as well as the fact that we also have 22,000 budgeted for economic development. So there's 2 different places where we could pay for this specific contract for this particular year. If we wanted to continue afterwards, then we would only have the economic development line item that we'd be able to pull from for 2022 and 2023. But we could use ARPA money for that.
So somehow, if you guys remember, a couple of years back, we had like a community relations person here in town. This is different, I understand that. But is there anything else that the town would fall short in, that Miles and his company could also cover having that economic experience? You guys remember when we had that person on staff? And they were more community, hands-on?
So that's
I'm
where.
assuming that's where that part-time
Yes.
application will come in.
So that's where the part-time PR, the coordinator that we were looking at, is because we also need someone to help out with events. And that's one thing we need somebody here to help out with the events. The social media, I got all the faith in the world that Michelle would be able to take care of that with us being off-site, and I wouldn't have any issues with that. But at the same time, there's little things that it's nice if somebody's getting a cup of coffee or gets lunch at Ethel's and it looks good, being able to take the picture right there outside of Ethel's, or doing those different things and sharing that on, because we Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We also have to update the website. So that's something where I think that part-time PR coordinator, the social media aspect, yes, I think they could take care of it. But I think once we're looking at the events and specifically the town website, just the regular maintenance of it, that's where we're definitely going to need that person. So that's where I figured they could be the higher level. And then, like I said, the PR person, that would be that boots on the ground, kind of helping with run the business roundtables, get the agendas and print the stuff out, and figure out where they're going to meet that month. And all that stuff would be the PR person, and they would kind of show up and help with the resources, so that we kind of get the best of both worlds. We get that regular, social media presence, marketing and stuff like that, but then we also have targeted, this is the times you should do it, this is how often, all that information can come from them. So that's where I kind of see it. Like I said, it's the 1-2 punch between the part-time PR as well as them consulting.
And I would add, to support what Chris said, we are very much in favor of having some local capacity. We'll be even more effective and more helpful if you've got some local capacity here. We don't see that as competition, rather we see that as strengthening the overall program. The other thing is, we did put a clause in here saying if you wanted to expand the work for us at any time, we have a rate there, a daily rate that's closer to our usual hourly rate. So that's always there. If something comes up and Chris says, Miles, we got to have help with this and this, we can expand it.
I can certainly attest to that rate as more of an hourly rate. Yeah.
That's what happens when we're dumb enough to fall in love with our client.
That's what happens when Miles writes the proposal.
So I would be curious about some of the metrics and measuring success and all, but I guess we can talk about that later.
That's something where if you have time, I know Miles started this a couple years ago, which I was actually looking at because I would want to do the same thing and actually start these metrics. But in Fauquier's budget, there is an economic development section. So what it does is it actually tracks business license. So it shows how much money is coming in, how much money the businesses are bringing in, and of course it varies because professional services or finance services are at a higher rate than restaurants. So that it kind of ebbs and flows, but you can see an overarching, is it going up 5 or 10% each year? Is it going down? You can also track businesses that are opening and closing. And then, so there's a couple different metrics. And if you look at Fauquier 2019's budget, I know it's in there. I don't know about FY 20 or 21.
We also, as consultants, don't do any work where we don't develop performance measures. Because otherwise, whether you're a community, a state, or a consultant, you develop a program, and at the end of a year, 3 years, 5 years, somebody says, well, it didn't do what it was supposed to do. Well, we should have defined that from the beginning.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
I'm sure everybody wants to dig into this, and you might see some questions later on.
Thank you for having us tonight.
Thank
Thank you.
Is this a carryover agenda item, or when do we want to look at this again?
23rd.
The 23rd? Okay.
And we're talking about art money.
Okay.
That's right.
We're asking as a follow-up item, do we need to follow up next week?
Yeah.
Or,
I mean, we could put it on next week's agenda. If we don't put it on next week's agenda, then we are only going to talk about CIP next week.
Well, what more information would we have for next week? I guess we'd all have read this completely. At least I know I would have, right? Because I didn't get a chance to.
well, we would want to look,
No, go ahead.
we have the community relations description that just came out.
We'd like to see that.
That Chris sent out, and then relationship to that with this. And
See
then
how they mesh.
see how they mesh and give direction on how to refine that if we want to take it on. Because it's $12,000, do we have to put it out to, excuse me, does it need some snacks? Do we need to put it out to bid, or?
If you guys would like to, I think it's going to be kind of hard to define the scope of work and.
I'm just
find
asking
people.
to, okay. Well, if we're,
It's up for council.
Well, what's the recommendation? What would be the recommendation?
I think that this is something that when we went and did CARES Act, that it was a very, very successful program that we did, and I think this is just a carryover after the CARES Act that we want to continue working, and now we're just finding how to fund it, but I do think that this is a carryover from that CARES Act.
I think the CARES Act showed immense success in distributing that and offering this as a service to our businesses, not only the ones currently here, but the ones that we're wanting to have come in. Like I said, it's very attractive.
It's a great resource, I agree.
I agree, it's specialized and it's enough of a niche market, and we have a sense of urgency because of,
Because business is important, but again, the type of business that we're wanting to have come into our community is just as equally important.
I mean, just this consultant service is sort of a niche thing that we have some expediency, we need to get rolling, so.
I think it's more than consultancy because they're coming alongside and they're helping and they're building websites and it's more than just consultant work. It's really what every startup or every struggling business need. Somebody that they can, and most people don't have this. Most people don't have this type of resource to tap into. Hey, how do you build a website? How do you get your things marketing? We don't have it. But for us, the town, to be able to offer this service, it's commendable that we actually find someone who likes the town and that has a proven track record.
It's hard to find someone that likes the town.
And the track record, you forgot that.
Yeah. You finished?
I am.
Okay, good. So the question is, with 12,000, Mr. Mayor, do we need to get just one comparative quote? just to satisfy what we have set down as the guideline. Because in no way should we ever put ourselves in a position where it might seem like favoritism, even though they have a track record and they like the town, right? But how do we protect ourselves?
That was my point.
I'm still talking. So it's, how do we do that?
I will try and reach out with economic development consulting firms to try and get some type of rate to get an idea.
I'm
So
assuming- I'm
I'll try and
assuming
find
Prince William-
something. And I mean, this is also something that Miles and I talked about with the CARES Act as to like how to get it on a smaller scale. So this, I mean, as he mentioned, this is not something that is prevalent out there for us to find someone with 40 years experience in economic development to help. But like I said, I'm sure there's economic development firms or business solutions or something like that that we can try and reach out to.
Continuation of the CARES Act consulting contract.
Can I build upon your comment?
Is that?
Question would have been, how did we handle it with the CARES Act? So, exactly. What did we do and how much was it again?
You guys had asked me to find an expert in CARES Act in October. Well, you guys asked in September, and I found Miles, who worked for Fauquier Economic Development for 7 years. And we didn't have a lot of time to question everything, so it was either move forward with it then and have that help, or basically try and facilitate it on it by ourselves.
So that was
we moved
basically
forward.
a sole source. We essentially
It
did a
was sole source, and that's where I said.
And how much was it? Do you
It
remember?
was 16,000 for basically October, November, and December.
But he's willing to do 12,000 for a year.
A year.
So what we're essentially doing is extending the contract. So if we're extending an existing contract,
You don't need it. That's a good point.
We are technically extending the contract, but at the same time, this has a lot of different metrics, because originally it was just solely spending the CARES Act, and the scope is changing. So I mean,
changing the scope of an existing contract and extending the contract.
That's right. It's a change mod, right?
We don't need comparison bids.
Well,
We can go about doing it. I don't know that it's worth the time and effort to do it. Given the existing nature of the relationship, the past performance, and the fact that by its very nature, this contract would be as limited as the last contract due to the ultimate expiration of the principal funding sources and the principal responsibility, namely art money. So,
although the CARES Act was a much tighter time frame, right?
and
then
we
it
still
got
have,
extended.
and this will still involve the remainder of, or the administration of the remainder of this. Was it $68,000? I think we still have in CARES Act.
Roughly, yeah. And what was the extension on that? Not
it was
this
to
year, next
December of
year.
2021.
Oh, that's
So it
this
is
year.
this year.
So it is this year.
Right. And the ARP, I'm sorry, and the ARP?
No, I have something to say.
Go ahead, talk.
I'm kidding. Go ahead.
You finished? So I agree with Bob. It seemed like it's an extension. If we want to agree on it, it's just an extension, and we don't need a
An
separate-
extension and a renegotiation, rescoping. Yeah.
That's right. Contract mod, whatever.
Well, and then the earlier points making that because it's necessity, it's specialized, if we wanted to defend not having the other bids, I think in addition to that, we can just say, you can do a preliminary effort to say, hey, I've not been able to find anyone else that can provide this service. It's so much of a
The other thing,
specialized service coming out of
I think the other
COVID.
thing you have to bear in mind is that the CARES Act funding deadline is rapidly approaching. We're down to 6 months, less than 6 months. So there is a certain level of expediency required, at least for that component of the funding. And I'd kind of like to use up that $68,000 and not have to write a check back to the feds, or at least as small a check back as we possibly can.
So agenda item for next week?
I say,
I think so.
yeah.
I say yes.
Yeah, progressive.
Do you want to do it as a contract ratification or
if you
motion, resolution?
Well, that's what I was going to say. If you guys want to give me a motion to change the scope and extend the previous contract, then I'll move forward with Martin on that and get that squared away.
Think you could have it by next week?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you guys give me the authority next week, then I should be able to move forward pretty quick.
You
after
can
that.
issue a directive tonight.
Yeah.
Well, there was
that's an
a-
easy directive.
I think Councilman Passanello wanted to review it and ask questions, and I guess was the presumption that if you had questions, they would make tweaks to it?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The idea of reviewing the documents ahead of next week, would it be to make some tweaks to this proposal and refinement? Can we do that and,
I don't know until I read it.
okay, well, I guess I'm saying part of next week was to be able to ask questions and make refinements, if that was the intent. So,
Yeah, that is my intent, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, we could go forward with a directive and still go through it and we
Tweak
can
it.
tweak that further, right? I mean, that's not a problem.
Because that's the other thing is if with the authority to amend the contract and with the extension, that gives some time to get it all hammered out until it's finalized. So,
Yeah, makes sense.
So directive, start the process with Martin. Put it on the agenda item for us to ask any further questions, for Martin to refine, and try to get this out before next month.
Yeah.
Okay, next agenda item. Monthly financial report.
Good evening, council. In front of you, you are seeing the new fiscal year budget report, actuals versus budget. For Councilman Ramirez, please do not worry when you see the number showing as a negative, because to explain that to you is the town at the beginning of each fiscal year does front load a few costs, mainly our debt obligation loan. Payment is made, the big chunk is made in the first month of July, August. So that's kind of where the negative derives from. On this budget, you can also see that the bottom, how we have received the funds from the ARP funds and have split it similar to the CARES Act away from the operational budget to track it separately from our operational budget versus the other income. Once we do the amendment, you see that there's a revenue source for it, but there's no expenditure line item on the bottom. That'll be corrected once we do the first quarter amendment. They'll show the amount coming in and amount going out. Particularly with the ARP, American Rescue Plan funds, ARP, we went ahead and, unlike the CARES Act, we are able to gain interest on these funds. So we were, I was tasked to talk to our branch manager at Fauquier Bank to see what kind of account we can set up for the ARP funds. During that conversation, we also realized that we currently have a merchant account being held in the money market. The merchant account mainly holds majority of our reserve funds and a little bit more. It had about a little bit over 800,000. Actually, the exact number was 868,486 at the time. During this conversation, she made me aware that currently we were getting a return rate of 0.30 on the funds. If we were to bump up, it's a tier interest rate type of account. So meaning that once the balance goes up, the interest return could go up as well. We were only about $131,000 away from going to that next tier of additional 0.05. After conversations with the town manager and the finance liaisons, we went ahead and transferred the additional funds to bump it over the $1 million mark on that merchant account just to get that additional interest. The funds were actually moved from the operational account, which on our operational general account will be fine to do it. It won't hurt us to do business as usual. But we just thought that it would be a good rate to take advantage of that scenario. The type of account that we do have for the ARP funds is a money market account, which allows us to actually move the funds if need be. When we need to, if we need to move it, we have up to 6 transactions per month without any cost to us. And it was the higher interest that currently that they were offering for us, so we are going to go ahead and place it, open the account with that, with the hopes to, with the second tranche that comes in, put us over the million, so it will also increase that interest rate up to from a 0.30 to a 0.35. That is something that I apologize. I'm working on a memo to include on the next works on the town council report, kind of explaining that what I just explained just now, to make it clear for everyone, so everyone knows that out there what the town is doing with the funds. Aside from that, I'm not sure if you guys have any. Oh, another thing I do want to ask council, if you guys would want me to include in the council report a unadjusted, unaudited FY 2021 budget, meaning the one that closed on June 30th. I can tell you right now that unadjusted, unaudited numbers, we are looking at a surplus of about 271. We still have funds coming in from the sales tax. We're about 2 months behind. Once again, that's no control of mine. It's through the county. So we're still working on that. If that's something to share, if you guys would want to see it there, just to have it on record, I'd be more than happy to include it on my report, along with, you know, the current up-to-date one. As far as that, I don't know if anyone has specific questions. Be more than happy to answer.
This is a follow-up to my earlier point about where the pools of money we can pull from the CIP, that we can add that to the reserves to be able to pull from. That's what you're asking, or that's something we could do?
Yeah.
That surplus would go in the reserves.
The surplus will go to the reserves, or, you know, there are loans out there that we could pay off.
Alternatively,
with,
okay.
Yeah, with the surplus as well.
Current policy is to shift it to reserves, although we could use it to pay down something.
Yes.
Or fund something.
Or fund something.
Chris? No, just one question, and please don't take this the wrong way, but can you, the manager, and the liaison move $100,000 or more without council approval?
Good question.
So all we did is we moved it from one account to a different account in the bank. So it's still in the exact same bank. We still have access to it. It's the liquidity is the same. We have every way, shape, and form. It is still up to council how we spend that money. All we did is just how we organized it was different so that it was at a higher interest rate that the town was earning. That's all that we did.
I understand that, but my point is, can the three of you move it without council's approval?
We didn't move it anywhere. It is still within Fauquier Bank.
Yeah, but you moved it across to another account. I just want to know what the process is for a decision like that. Just, I mean, again, please don't take this the wrong way. I'm just asking, what is the process?
So, I mean, right now, we don't have a process in place for moving from one account to the next. I mean, it's the same thing.
Don't get me wrong, it was a smart move. I just want to know what the process is.
Well, and that's where I was just like, so we don't have a process in place for that, because there's certain times throughout the year we have to move money for different reasons, whether it's paying for Haymarket Day when all the contractors are due at the same time, or different money needs to be moved. You need to have the flexibility to move. This was just one when Roberto met and kind of weighed it all out. I mean, literally, June 30th, we got $800,000. It was just dumped in the bank account. And we didn't really have any option on to where it went. And so basically, Roberto just, where it went, the state gave it to us. It was not necessarily the account that we would have wanted them to put it in if they asked us, hey, where do you want us to put this account? We would have said this different one. So all we did is moved it from where they put it without asking to essentially where we wanted it. So there wasn't anything nefarious. It was just putting it where it needed to be. Where if they asked us right off the bat, hey, where do you want this money, we would have told them.
Again, I think it was the right decision. I'm just asking for processes. Because in the past, if you think about it, if you had a different style of, I always go back to what it was before, and the influences of things that can happen if the proper processes aren't in place. Just checks and balances.
Historically, apart from shifting from one bank to another, just in all the time I've been doing this, the authority to transfer from one account to the other, to liquidate a CD, to cover expenditures, to liquidate a CD because it's time to take the money out and put it in a different account has, as far as I can recall, always been the fiat of the treasurer. Correct. The treasurer. He's the bonded officer that handles the money. So I don't, I don't see anything unusual about it at all.
Well, I think the question is, do we need a process or of approval for that? And frankly, I agree. I don't think we do, because, as Bob says, that's under his authority. I mean, unless, of course, he put it in his own account temporarily.
Yeah, where is it? Who's getting the interest on that account?
No, but, you know, Roberto certainly checked with the liaisons as well.
No, I think it's good. I think it was
And that's kind of like the check and balance, too.
Yes.
We could, in the future, if we want to, as a council, bring it to council and get the.
No, I
fin-
think- I mean,
wait a
that
minute,
is-
let me finish. Get the finance committee approval. We could certainly do that if we wanted to. I don't personally see the need for it, but we could do that. I mean,
I think the three, what you guys mentioned, the three of you guys in agreement with it, or four, doing it, I think that's enough. That's just my opinion, so.
well, no, you're just trying to check on it and make sure there's no holes in the process, which gets me to the next question that I had. Sorry, Marchant. As far as VML VACO goes, I mean, there's over 300,000 or whatever sitting in that, and I'm not really sure how well that's appreciating for us. And would it make sense to continue to do that? I mean, that required a resolution from the council to make that investment. You remember when we did that back in 15, 14, somewhere back there. So the question I have for Roberto and the staff is, and the council, do we keep it there? Or do we take that money and reinvest it someplace else, maybe even into the other accounts at Farkir? I don't know, just thought.
I kind of want to address that. So that thought, earlier on, a couple of months ago, about 3-4 months ago, we had a conversation with Steve, our rep from VML, and he was able to, I believe I shared that PowerPoint, that historically, the money has done well, though currently right now, it's not, but historically it has trended to show that the town has made more of a return versus if we would have kept it and tried to manage it ourselves at one of our local branches or bank. But that is something we can ask. I believe we have a meeting lined up with Steve on Friday to discuss the account, but also as well any potential options for the town when it comes to these projects.
And that's rather liquid too, if I remember right.
Yes.
So you could move it if you wanted to, but perhaps going back would be problematic, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
You're on the list.
Just to follow up to the decision about moving the money, you disclosed it. So I think part of us doing the monthly or the weekly reports is accounting for that transparency. So I think you did the right thing by bringing it to our attention. I think it's one way to have that transparency is you're telling people, you're telling the public that it's happening, so. good job.
Yep. And just like military, right, as long as you have a dual authority, two hands on it, so that there isn't any hidden agendas. Bob?
Thank Roberto for stealing my thunder, but, you know, with respect to the VML money, I mean, historically, it has significantly outperformed any other investment products that we have because we are precluded by and large from anything that even accrues a semblance of a risk in the market. VML operates under a different set of rules as an investment device. So I think it's, although I'm not particularly fond of the return we got last year, which was virtually nothing. Everything. I mean, the market in general was that way, and even though we got virtually nothing back, to be quite honest with you, we probably got more back than we would have if we just stuck it in our checking account at 0.3%. So I think just leaving it where it's currently at. I mean, we can access it at any point in time, but I think it would be damaging to, well. Damaging is kind of an interesting term because we don't know what the return will be this year. I would hope that this year's return will be significantly larger than last year's, but any return that we get from VML, I would suggest is going to be higher than we would get on any investment portfolios that we could put that money in legally at the local level.
Separate topic, can I bring up a separate topic?
All good?
Does it involve money?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bring it up. This is the best legal services report I've ever seen. 0. I love it.
Wait till next month when he catches up.
Just to circle back.
Your challenge is to keep it there.
To Marchand's point, when you do your report for next week, it'll be in there.
Yes, yes, you know, and I do apologize. There isn't a process. If the council does wish for me to, you know, discuss this, you know, before we make any sudden moves, you know, that's something I'm more than happy to do so. I just felt that at that time, by talking to the liaisons, making them aware, and having the town manager as well as part of it, to make this move, to try even to get a day or two ahead.
Absolutely not. From my point of view, and the reason I raised that topic, as Joe said, is just to make sure the process is there and for accountability, and the three of you guys are more than qualified to do it. We voted the liaison in, remember? If we didn't trust him, we wouldn't have voted him in.
Should we tell him about the boat we just bought?
No. So this is good. This is probably the most discussion of council when it comes to finances at a work session that I think we've ever had.
And what I liked about you two is you guys are on the finance committee, but you guys bring the stuff to council. It's like what you said the first meeting when you said, you're not the finance committee, the council is the finance committee.
Yeah, we don't want the responsibility.
That's right. Okay,
Thank you, Roberto.
thank you. We'll move on to the next item. Bob, will you please?
Session.
Do you have to close session?
I move that the council convene in closed session to discuss the following, as permitted by Virginia Code Section 2.23711A1. Personnel matters involving assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of the town, specifically dealing with part-time police officers and office staff, as permitted by Virginia Code Section 2.23711A7, for briefing by staff members or consultants pertaining to probable litigation involving Haymarket Properties Group and the pending case of Bean versus the town of Haymarket, where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the town.
So moved.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All in favor? We're good. Great.
Quick break?
Aye.
Good.
Quick break?
Quick break. Okay, we're back in session here.
Mayor, I move that the council certify that in the closed session just concluded, nothing was discussed except the matter or matters specifically identified in the motion to convene in closed session and lawfully permitted to be discussed in a closed session under the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as cited in that motion.
So moved.
Okay, motion and a second. Roll call. please.
Aye.
Casanello?
Yes.
Pater?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Schneider?
Yes.
Ramirez?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Without objection, I would direct staff to proceed as discussed with regard to the part-time officers and the town attorney.
Any objections?
Nope.
Okay. Last item on the agenda.
Go ahead.
Motion to adjourn.
Well, you can say it louder than that.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Here, got
Vice
it.
Mayor got it. Okay, all in
It's our
favor?
first time.
Aye.
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 I got time for a beer. Care to join me?